Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the latest episode of The Walking Dead, The King, the Widow and Rick. As is the norm with these reviews, there will be full spoilers for the entire episode, so I suggest you watch it first before watching this video. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Anyone who has watched my reviews of this season's installments of The Walking Dead will know that so far I've immensely enjoyed what I've seen. Sure, there have been issues here and there, but on the whole the first 5 episodes were fast, frantic and most importantly fun. In comparison, this week's entry, in all honesty, unfortunately is a bit of a dud. All in all, the plot just doesn't really go anywhere, with the King, the Widow and Rick spending far too much time setting up future events, instead of focusing on making the episode itself an interesting watch. There's various threads that are set up and left hanging, and it really did feel like a filler episode. One that I wouldn't hesitate to skip completely if I were to watch the season from start to finish again. I'll start off by addressing the narrative strand that I disliked the most this week, with that honour going to Milla Jovovich and her junkyard crew. Oh wait, sorry, I meant Jadis. I won't bore you all by spending too long discussing my hate for these people, I've done that enough already in the past, but I just want to point out that if the showrunner's intentions when creating this group were to make them grow on me, they are failing miserably. Every time they appear I find them to be more and more ridiculous. I mean, the first instance we see them this week, they are all butt naked making weird sculptures. Really, need I say any more? I remember reading somewhere that Scott Gimple says he has a good reason as to why the Junkyard group talk the way they do, but to be honest, I don't really care. I feel that no matter what the explanation is, I'm not going to change my opinion on them, and even though they played a significant part last season, I really just wish they had been written off the show completely when The Walking Dead returned. The show has been much better in terms of quality without them, and I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as they find themselves back on the screen, things start to go off the rails. Let's go away now from the bowl cut crew and onto the mentioned widow in the episode's title as we check in with Maggie at the hilltop. For me, when the narrative of this episode was on the hilltop, it was at its best, and it stopped this week's entry from being a total disaster. Maggie found herself still contemplating what to do with the Saviour prisoners, and Gregory decided to try and help her, and I use the term help very loosely. I actually laughed out loud when Gregory was trying to give Maggie instructions when she was outside with the prisoners during the start of the episode. It wasn't Gregory who made me laugh though, it was actually Enid. I just loved the way Maggie told Enid to get rid of Gregory, and Enid just shepherded him indoors like some kind of petulant child. Come on Gregory, come here Gregory, this way, that's it. Let's get you back inside your big house and you can go play with some of your toys. That's a good boy, Gregory. What a good boy. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but there was something oddly amusing about seeing a late teen lead a grown man inside like he was some kind of kid. I mean, he does act like a kid, so it does kind of make sense. Yeah, I know it's a bit weird and probably wasn't supposed to be intentionally funny, but it made me laugh anyhow. Whilst I'm on the subject of poor old Greggy boy, I'm glad that he finally got what he deserved when Maggie threw him in prison. I mentioned previously how I thought it was really dumb for Maggie to allow him back in the community in the first place after he sided with Negan, so it's nice to see that his backstabbing ways aren't going unpunished. I also liked how Maggie is cleverly thinking of using the prisoners as leverage, and it's going to be interesting to continue to see the opposing arguments from her and Jesus regarding exactly what to do with them. Personally, I don't think they should be straight up executed, well, apart from this guy, but I still don't trust them fully either. To be honest, if I was in charge I wouldn't really know what to do, so I don't envy Maggie one bit. Although I enjoyed the hilltop sequence for the most part, there was a moment in which Maggie sat in her office with Aaron that I didn't really enjoy because it felt way too forced and unnatural. In said scene, Aaron remarks that he is still expecting to see Eric next to him and he can't believe he's gone. He asks Maggie if it will get better and the two of them have a shared moment of grief. The reason I don't like this scene was because the dialogue felt really nonsensical. I mean, of course Aaron would still expect Eric to be there, he did only die one day ago. It was like this scene was only put in place just to remind viewers that Eric is actually dead. It just didn't seem like a natural conversation and I ended up rolling my eyes through the whole thing. In its attempt to make me feel bad for Aaron, it just didn't pull it off at all. Moving on from the hilltop into the kingdom, this episode gave us a chance to catch up with King Ezekiel, who has gone all emo after his dire defeat during the installment a couple of weeks ago. The scene in which Carol and Ezekiel speak about what is and what isn't real was a lot more affecting than Maggie and Aaron's scene, and it was nice to see the two sort of rekindle their friendship they had during season 7. I'd actually like to see these two have more time simply to talk to one another, as they both have a certain chemistry when on screen together. I do get why Ezekiel is so down, and I thought the actor who plays him put in a good performance. However, I am looking forward to seeing the return of the Jolly King, which isn't something I'd really thought I'd say a few weeks ago. So I guess the writers do deserve some credit for making me feel for him as well as the people of the kingdom. Briefly, before I move on to some of this week's other story points, I just want to say that I liked the little clever nod back to Sophia when Carol was talking to Ben's younger brother in the woods. Carol said something along the lines of, "Little children get lost in the woods and don't come back." Of course, you'll remember this is exactly what happened to Sophia all the way back in season 2, and it was a nice little Easter egg to have thrown in the dialogue. Going from a nice thing to something that really annoyed me, the next 4 characters that I'm going to mention all managed to piss me off in one way or another due to their nonsensical and plain stupid actions. First up are Michonne and Rosita, who simply decided that they just had to leave Alexandria to take a look at the sanctuary. To me, the reasoning behind this decision just felt like the writers saying, well, you know what, we haven't used these two in the programme in a while, let's give them something to do. It didn't really seem that there was much care to exactly what they had them doing. The pair encountered a saviour outpost, one of the seemingly thousands that they have, and got into an altercation with 2 of Negan's followers. Fear not, because Rosita managed to find a rocket launcher and blew up one of the saviours to pieces. I mean, talk about overkill, although I will admit this moment did catch me by surprise and was pretty cool. However, the downside to this was that she allowed the other saviour to escape with a truck that contained a massive speaker system capable of drawing away the walkers surrounding the sanctuary. Just as it seemed like Michonne and Rosita had messed up massively, Daryl and Tara appeared out of nowhere to save the day. Now, I don't mind the show having its heroes arrive in the nick of time once or twice every now and then, but it feels like The Walking Dead is doing this every episode at the moment, which is making these instances go from wow, that's really awesome, to really, is this happening again? I mean, it doesn't seem to matter what our protagonists do, someone always turns up to save them in the right place at the right time. The reason this is bugging me is because there's no real consequences for characters' actions, resulting in a lot of the drama and tension from the show completely disappearing. I mean, let's look at an example from the episode Some Guy, specifically the moment in which Carol has the choice of pursuing the saviours who are leaving with the big guns, or saving Jerry and Ezekiel. Carol of course chose to save her 2 comrades, and as a result the saviours drove off with the guns. This decision should have been a hard choice, there should have been repercussions either way. As things stand, however, Rick and Daryl arrived out of nowhere to kill the guys with the guns and save the day. A similar thing happened this episode. Rosita chose to blow up the dude and wasted an RPG that could have easily been used to stop the escaping car. With the car speeding off into the distance, I found myself thinking, Rosita, you really should have saved that bullet, what have you done? As I began to think about the possibilities of the saviours luring away the walkers due to Rosita's error, Daryl showed up and completely destroyed this possibility by conveniently saving the day once again. It really seems that no matter what the characters we follow do at the moment, someone is always going to appear to bail them out. If this is to happen every time a character is faced with a decision or appears to make the wrong choice, then it completely takes away the idea that their choice actually matters. Why give us these moments when it looks like there may be a consequence for a character's mistake, only to have someone appear 2 minutes later and solve everything? It's just getting a bit silly. And speaking of silly, why the hell did Tara and Daryl suddenly decide they need to kill Dwight right now? I mean, I get that Tara hates him because he killed Olivia, but surely it can wait. And as for Daryl, well, it just seems idiotic to kill a guy who is pretty much the main reason why he and Rick have had so much success on the battlefield so far. I feel the show has tried to paint this rivalry between the two since Dwight's arrival, but it just hasn't done a good job of showing it. I read an interview in which Norman Reedus explained that Daryl believes it's his fault that Olivia died, which is why he's so intent on killing Dwight. And that's fine, I get that, but it doesn't change the fact that Olivia and Daryl were never ever really that close. And I can't see Daryl risking his life to take out a guy who killed someone he didn't even particularly seem to care about. It seems like Tara and Daryl's little mission was only introduced by the writers so they could end up in a dangerous situation come the mid-season premiere. Little thought seems to have been given about it actually making sense. Before I finish, I should also mention that Siddiq showed up and spoke to Carl, and they talked, and that was about it really, so yeah. Okay, I'm not being entirely fair. I did actually like the interaction between these two, and I'm glad that Carl is becoming his own man by coming to his own conclusions about those around him. I think Carl's attitude will definitely link into Rick reflecting on his own attitude towards killing, and the Siddiq-Carl relationship could prove vital as the season pushes forward. The term pushes forward is an apt point to end this review on, as the focus of this entry was purely to push characters forward into the 2 remaining episodes of the first half of this season. However, although foundations have been laid for future plot points to take place, said characters and plots didn't really go anywhere this episode, and instead it remained rather static. The Widow, the King and Rick ended things with Enid and Aaron setting off with one another, Rick locked up, Sadiq and Carl together, Carol venturing out with Ben's brother, and Rosita, Daryl, Tara and Michonne all ready to storm the sanctuary. It purely existed to set things up to come, moving the pieces on the chessboard ready to make a move when the moment arises. Unfortunately, that doesn't really make a decent hour of TV. I do fully accept that if this episode hadn't existed and The Walking Dead simply jumped from things as they were in the Big Scary U to the next installment with characters all over the place as they were at the end of this week, then I would have rightly complained as to how they got there. So I guess you could argue that this chapter was necessary. However, being necessary doesn't mean it's going to be fun. And The Widow, the King and Rick certainly wasn't. So there you have it, my review of the latest episode of The Walking Dead. As always, please let me know your thoughts below, perhaps you agree with me, perhaps you disagree with me, and until next time, thank you very much for watching and goodbye.